going, everybody? My name is Sai, and today we're going to go over my top 20 albums of the year for 2021. Now, you may be wondering, Jesus, 20, don't you think that's a little fucking excessive? Yeah, it is. That's what I asked every musician who decided to put out music this year, because holy crap, dude, a lot of bands put out some really, really great music. Some music that I wasn't really into, but for the most part, I think a lot of the music that came out this year is just really, really solid, and I thought I was doing a lot of bands injustice by narrowing it down to only 10, because I couldn't fit all of the bands that I really, really enjoyed in that list. So, without further ado, Call It Ego's The New Elevator. Now, this is an album that I have had mixed feelings on first listen. It's one of those albums where I really, really enjoy it, but it can be a little bit hard to digest on its own. It's definitely an album that owes itself more to a full listen all the way through, and its story, which is not a bad thing in the scope of what the record is trying to do, but I always factor it in when I'm giving my reviews. But at the end of the day, one thing is undeniable, in that it's a really, really masterful musician doing one of his most masterful projects yet. His most diverse, his most technically sound, his most engaging, and there's even individual songs like the one Flip, which actually stand out in his discography as being some of his most re-listenable work for me. So that is why it made it to this list at number 20. When you lose all feeling, coming in at number 19 is Sion, their self-titled album, which this is the project of Jared Dines and Howard Jones. Howard Jones sounds as good as he's ever sounded here, in my opinion. I think he's back to kind of his Kill Switch sound, which, in my opinion, this might be a hot take or something, but I didn't quite care for his singing as much in Light the Torch. At least what I've heard of it. I haven't heard all their discography or anything like that, but what I had heard, it did feel like he was a little bit more restrained, possibly just from recovering from his illness, but he is back full tilt here, and Jared Dines proving kind of what we already knew, which is he's more than just haha funny guitar guy. He's definitely an extremely talented individual. He comes up with very memorable riffs, and this whole project just really channels that great mid-2000s metalcore sound that I come to crave a lot from bands that may necessarily not be doing it so much anymore.
This bitch got me paying her rent, paying for trips, diamonds on her neck, diamonds on her wrist, and here I am.
Coming in at number 17 is Silk Sonic's An Evening with Silk Sonic. Now, if you would have asked me if I would have ever featured Bruno Mars or a Bruno Mars project on this list, I probably would have laughed you out of the building. He's a talented singer, but I've just never really fucked with the songwriting that much. Here that all changes, probably due to a large part for the collaborator on this, Anderson .Paak, who I really got to check out more of his stuff, because he blends rap and modern pop sensibilities with funk. This whole thing has this great throwback 70s funk style to it, and it is just so fun, so catchy and infectious. All the hooks thrown out through here, the energetic rap sections, everything just comes together really nicely, and I feel like it doesn't overstay its welcome, which is a good thing, because I feel like if it had gone on for a little bit much longer, it might have gotten old and trite, but it cut it off just in time, and that's why it's on this list.
You just being here, being used enough for me. You just being here, being used enough for me. It's love.
Up next is Modest Mouse's Golden Casket. Now, Modest Mouse is a band that I've loved to cover on this channel. I didn't have time to do it when this album did come out, and I just kind of listened to it on my own time, but I will say that I was glad I did, because I got to really sit down and digest it, and let me tell you, this is some of their best work in many years. I'd say almost a decade. Now, if you know Modest Mouse purely from Float On, do yourself a favor, go check out some of their deeper cuts, because it doesn't do them justice at all. This is a very unique and diverse band, very nihilistic and weird band as well, and I think a little bit of that returns here, but also there's a little bit of rainbow on the other side of the hill here, so to speak, where it brings in a lot of lush, pleasing sounding textures to go in with the stranger layered vocals and the southern twang that the singer is known for. There's a lot of really great stuff going on here, and I just think it fits cohesively, and it is, like I said, their best work in a while. number 16 is Bellacore's Coherence. Now, this is a melodic death metal band. It's the first album I've heard by them, but goddamn did they make an impression. They have a very, very nice talent of weaving some of the most beautiful progressive elements together and fusing them almost seamlessly with punishing deep set death metal vocals and instrumentals. Just a lot of ferocity going on that quickly pulls out into these really lush, grandiose moments, easily carries these songs through their frankly quite fucking daunting runtimes without ever feeling like they're getting old. And that's an impressive feat because I get bored of long songs really damn quickly, as you guys probably know from watching this. So it's an impressive feat. It is one of the cooler death metal albums I've heard this year, and it is at number 16. Coming in at number 15, we've got the GazettE's Mass. Now, I reviewed this before, and I gotta say, my opinions of this album have not changed much. I do think it is some of their best work that I've certainly heard since they took their new leaf into more metalcore sounding songs and song structures. I think everything just kind of comes together in a really cohesive package. If you like the Gazette at all, if you like any sort of visual kei that blends with metalcore, talk about like the Gazette or later period Duran Gray, stuff like that, you will probably really like this album. They use a lot of cool synth effects without really overstaying their welcome on it. A lot of great focus on the musicianship. Every single musician gets their moment in the sun on this album, and it goes by at a very nice brisk pace, which is something that I was sorely missing from their previous work, so it was cool to see it happen here. Next up, we got a rap album. We've got Tyler the Creator's Call Me If You Get Lost. I contemplated putting this one on here because I do think it comes up a little bit short when compared to his other work, but even here, coming up a little bit short, it still stands leaps and bounds above a lot of the other acts in this genre, and I really came back to this one just because of the lyricism, honestly. The song Corso really sums it up well. He's got a nice balance with how badass he is and how successful he is and where he is in life, and then he balances it out with the real shit that he has to deal with, like past relationships, guilt, loneliness, friends not measuring up in ways that maybe they should have, and it kind of hurts when you have to watch it happen without being able to guide them, etc. Lots of cool lyricism there, and then of course he's known for these really great lush productions. I say that a lot because I love lush productions. I love super pleasing to sound, not quite lo-fi, but definitely full and ambient productions, and this album nails it a lot. But what sets it apart from his previous work, at least the most recent stuff, is he goes pretty fucking hard on it as well. There are some legitimate banger tracks for sure. I feel so white doing that. There are some legitimate bangers on this shit. It goes hard, it gets you moving, but then it reels you back in for a mellow, serious moment, and that is why it's on this list. Next up is Brand Sacrifice's Lifeblood. Now, this is one of the many bands that is kind of helping reshape the term deathcore in a big way. And I think what strikes me about Brand Sacrifice is they go very close to deathcore, but they're changing not so much the structures of it, but the overall soundscapes. They bring a very doom eternal Mick Gordon sound to things with crazy industrial elements mixed in with guitars, very epic string moments that really just make you feel like you're cleaving through hordes of demons, which is appropriate considering they are a Berserk fan band. And the vocals, I mean, the vocals are fucking nasty. I gotta admit, now that I've listened to more deathcore stuff, I can really appreciate the range that this guy has. This guy has a monstrous range, and it's very impressive. And I love to see what they're doing next, though I will say their latest single has been very promising and mixing up the formula even fucking more, so I can't wait to see what their next record is. Next up is Spiritbox's Eternal Blue. Now, this is an album that I feel like maybe isn't quite the blow you away epic proportions that a lot of people would say it is, at least for me. But as far as an ambient metalcore album goes, this is pretty up there, and I do like the more progressive tendencies. Now, I will say there are some weird structure things that didn't really sit right with me, which is why it almost didn't make it on this list. This is the album that really pushed me over into expanding it to 20, because it was between this and the next album up here, and I really didn't want to leave them out because it takes a lot to get so much fucking hype and not to let the fan base down at all, and to still kind of impress with the deeper cuts and not fall into a formula that seemed like it was laid in stone with the singles that had come out for this thing. So yeah, I definitely love the genre bending. I love the more clean melodic moments that take advantage of the inventive soundscapes they can come up with, as well as Courtney's voice, which hits some pretty impressive range here. And I definitely think don't count them out. I know the hype can turn some people off, but trust me on this one, this is definitely a solid ambient metalcore band. Coming in at number 11 is Silent Planet's Iridescent. Now, Silent Planet was a band that I was kind of not really focusing on. I know it was another really hyped up metalcore band, kind of like Spiritbox. It came out really ambient and mixing a lot of different genres, like Spiritbox. They've been amping up this album for over a year, like Spiritbox. And like Spiritbox, they fucking delivered, though honestly, if we're making comparisons between the two, because that is kind of what the point of this fucking list is, they hit it harder, man. This album rocks. This album's really good. The pacing is perfect. It just flies by. It mixes all sorts of really cool experiments with just punishing riffs and breakdowns in sections that don't feel out of place, just blended in really well, which is like a big thing for me with album structure. You have to have that good blend. You can't just have good pieces sprinkled throughout. And I think they nail that here. And then I gotta give special credit to the final song, the title track, which has such a great buildup of pressure to this monstrous fucking finish that goes borderline mathcore. It is so cool. It is one of the finest moments of this album, one of the finest moments of any music this year. Definitely check it out. They lived up to the fucking hype.
Now you got yourself a new gun, but you swore you never shoot one.
Number 10, That Handsome Devil, Your Parents Are Sellouts. So this is an album that is another probably out of left field album. I did a reaction to it earlier at the request of a good friend of the channel, Lazy Jake, and I gotta say, I've listened to a lot of this guy's music because of Lazy Jake, and this is easily some of my favorite. And one of the things that really pushes this album above the rest, above a lot of albums this year for me, is the overall message. Your Parents Are Sellouts is actually something that kind of describes the album really well, but it's kind of blended in interesting ways. He's talking essentially about the parental tendencies to throw a bunch of pressures and a bunch of double standards on their children and then turn around and be like, how did they possibly turn fucked up? It's a cool concept to play with, especially in this year where a lot of societal norms seem to be breaking apart and not functioning in the way that they should be. And on top of that, there's so many just fun, infectious, groovy songs, lots of really great production. Evil People, for example, is one of my favorite just sit down and chill out songs ever, and just some fun. It's really fun. He always makes such fun sounding tunes and some hilarious lyrics, and you might not take it seriously, but by the end it hits you pretty hard with the message, and you go back and reevaluate everything and you're like, God damn, he was spitting on that. That was incredible. So yeah, definitely check that out if you haven't. It's not metal, but it is still one of the finest albums to come out this year.
Somebody give a big man a little throw. Somebody give a sick man his poison pill.
Coming in at number 9, we got Every Time I Die's Radical. What can I say about this? Every Time I Die was not on my radar. Not at all. I know people loved them, but every time I listened to them, I was like, okay, it's cool, it's hardcore, move on. This album solidifies it, dude. This album is an album that put them on the radar for me, and I have to check out more because holy shit, this is one consistent fucking album. They are just so punishing, relentless. The production is tight. The singing comes in at just the right moments without losing any of the momentum. It's speedy, it's aggressive, and yet it still has a mind to peel back, reveal some almost stoner rock tendencies, and kind of mellow out a little bit, but it paces it so well where it brings in some of these more interesting elements in the middle and then ends for a punchy, explosive finish. It's a really, really, really fucking good album, and I'm almost ashamed that they've been off my radar up until this point, but I'm gonna fix that.
Angel said don't let ego be a disturbance. In the demon said motherfucker you earn this. Like they strip you of everything you're deserving.
Next up we got Little Simz, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. So this album is kind of the best rap album I've heard in over a fucking decade. Like just period. Even from the first song. The first song is just such an attention grabbing, demanding, diverse, lush, impactful fucking intro to a lot of societal and personal problems that this rapper deals with being a female rapper. And it kind of expands to not just that, but just being a female black woman in the UK and kind of the worldviews that they have to deal with and just everyday life situations, from relationships to expectations heaped upon them. It's so well put together, and it is just constantly gripping you with just gorgeous melodies and the flow that is just so easy to fucking listen to and vibe along with. She really is standing out above the rest, and I'm genuinely shocked. I was not going into this album expecting much crazy. It was just my friend was like, hey dude, check this out. But damn, it was fucking good. I definitely, if you like rap at all or think you might want to try rap that's not like your typical radio rap or something like that, go check it out. You will not be disappointed. Next up is Hail the Sun's new Age Filth. Now it was between this and Idol as the Architect for me, but I gotta confess, I didn't listen to the latter enough. I didn't really get to absorb it and to get enough of a grip of it to put it on this list, though I feel like it would end up right next to this one because they are both perfect mathcore albums. And this one in particular, since I did listen to it several times and really digest it, I can tell you, break it down, it's the way they carry momentum. Each song slowly builds up until the explosive parasitic cleanse, and then it starts to kind of peter out a little bit, but not fully lose momentum. It just sort of slows it down and eases you out of the complete pounding you've just witnessed, and go through all these different motions. And the thing I like the most about this band is how they can catch you in the feeling. It's a mathcore band, it's a swancore band, but it doesn't exactly get lost in its own noodling and technicalities. It uses them as creative layers to balance out the overall sound, and the vocalist is doing a fantastic job for a higher set vocalist. Usually those are a little bit harder for me to get into, but I think he's doing a fantastic job here. He balances out the screams and aggressions with the more slower, melodic, clean passages very, very well, and I just think the way this album was put together was just perfect. Every single time I thought, okay, maybe this could get old, it changed it up in a meaningful way and wowed me. So that puts it high on this list. Ice Nine Kills, The Silver Scream 2, Welcome to Horrorwood is a bit of a redemption for me, honestly, because I didn't really dig the Silver Scream 1 that much. I thought the mid-section really got bogged down in a lot of post-hardcore tropes, and I got pretty bored with it really quickly, even though the intro tracks and the outro tracks are both fucking excellent in their own way, and cuts like Stabbing in the Dark and Thank God It's Friday really, really, really stand above the rest. And I think the best part of this album is that they take the template, the bar set by Stabbing in the Dark in those songs, and they actually meet it for pretty much the whole album. I would say the worst point of this album is a single verse on the song The Shower Scene, where I feel like it sounds a little bit like lawsuit levels, like The Emperor's New Clothes from Panic at the Disco. And outside of that though, they pull it back because they put out their most infectious and gripping, powerful chorus that they've ever written on there. And they have so many other really great standout moments. The chaos and the impact of all their songwriting is at full display for a majority of this, and the way that they use their features is really tasteful, really impactful. Huge highlight of the year. And this is kind of where it starts getting muddled, because I could take most of these albums as one of the best albums of any other year, but we're all piling them on here at the end, so buckle up. Next we got Erra's self-titled. This is pretty much easily Erra's best work for me. It is their most balanced work, where they take their progressive tendencies and they distill it a little bit to a more palatable register without losing sight of themselves. I also think that the vocalists go as hard as they have ever gone. The screamers hitting record-breaking highs and lows for the band. The clean singer is always pulling in a really solid job, especially impressive because he's always laying into the guitar, playing leads that entire time, laying down these really intricate melodies that are infectious and really grip you in. The way they balance in speed and aggression together without getting old, because again, they're switching it up the entire time, pulls out to a really solid album. And I think that you could go back into this album, listen to it a dozen times, and still pick out something new that you love, and that is impressive for anybody to pull off. So it's really great to see them really coming into their own, because they were already a pretty damn great band as it was. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what comes after this. Next up we got Whitechapel's Kin. Now Whitechapel's The Valley started them on this path of more melodic, atmospheric, dense and dark material as opposed to aggressive and brutal material, but I feel like The Valley kind of pulled back a lot of times. Kin just fucking grabs the wheel and goes, and I think it contains some of the most poignant lyricism to date, not just from this band but from any deathcore band this year. I definitely think that one of the coolest musical moments this year is when they revealed that you can actually bleed the last song from The Valley seamlessly into the first song from this album, and it's kind of just like playing a double album back to back, and that is such a cool idea and a cool way to transition into this new chapter. But this is hardly The Valley 2. This is The Valley what the potential of The Valley could have been. This is their opus. They bring in progressive elements, they bring in mellow death elements, they bring in straight up death metal, they go straight into more grunge rock sensibilities, stuff that could probably pop up on the radio, especially with his gravelly register, and he pushes his voice even further than he did when he was just starting to clean sing. It's so impressive and it's really great. This guy's been hiding this damn voice from us because he doesn't slip up anywhere. He sounds like a classically trained, amazing fucking singing vocalist out of nowhere, and it's so impressive. And the fact that the songwriting does not let it fall on its ass, and that the whole band is willing to take that courage and leap into all new interesting directions, takes Whitechapel out of the deathcore genre completely and into their own thing, and boy, I can't be any more excited for it. Coming down to the wire, we got number 3, Turnstile's Glow On. Now this is another band that kind of remained out of my spectrum. They were a hardcore band, but now I think there's something different. Dream punk. I don't know how to describe it. It's really interesting. They have their hardcore roots still intact. Cuts like TLC are just straight up hardcore punk bangers that petter out into some really interesting shoegaze-esque, dream pop-esque production, kind of fluttering butterfly noises and different alien synth noises and singing tone that comes straight from that punk tonality, where it's almost kind of yelling at the microphone, but in a more eerie production that kind of balances out well. And this all probably sounds like I'm like kind of weirded out by the album, but I think it works well because it is some of the most infectious, well-produced music to release this year. This album could easily be my number 1 if it wasn't for the fact that there's just some incredible shit in number 1. and 2 for that matter. It's so well put together, and I'm gonna be paying attention to them a lot more from now on, because holy crap, it's so enjoyable, so well written, so, I wouldn't say meaningful, like none of the lyrics like really stand out and hit me in the heart, but it's just fun. It's fun out of 10, and you love to hear that kind of experimentation in a genre that can be as uptight as punk sometimes, and which is kind of funny because you would think that's like the opposite of the point, but I digress. It is definitely a standout record and worth your time. Coming in at number 2 is Holding Absence, The Greatest Mistake of My Life. Now this is one that is going to shock some people who have listened to my comments on relationship lyrics, because this is an album solely focused on the trials and tribulations of a relationship, but I think the way that they capture it and distill it is a very relatable and impactful manner, and it wouldn't be anything if it wasn't an immense, beautiful sounding album as well, but god damn, it is. There are some legitimately amazing songwriting choices, even from the intro of the album, which just hits you and sweeps you and fills you with such cheer and warmth. He's alive, he's so happy to be alive, and then it just slowly rips it all away over time as you get into a relationship you're scared of getting into, and then you're shown exactly fucking why you were scared of it. It was torn away from you, the person dies, you're mourning them, and you're left with this very, very haunting, old-timey soundtrack singing about the greatest mistake of someone's life. And at that moment, I'm gonna be honest with you, I got fucking emotional when that hit. That felt like I was empty. And an album has not done that to me in a long time, especially with subject matter that I'm not even really familiar with. And so that's impressive on its own right. The production's super solid. The singer hits all sorts of great highs, hitting these soaring notes, hitting more clean, super easy to listen to, passionate riffs in like Beyond Belief, for example, and then at some points belting into like these kind of cleanly flowing sing into scream moments that hit super hard and just project his rage at not the world so much, but at like God and the hand he's been dealt, and it's just so well pulled off. There isn't a single moment on this album that I feel misses, and that is very, very impressive, and why it is at number 2. Before we get into my number 1 album, I wanted to go over the EPs of the year, because believe it or not, this is really important for this year, because some of the EPs here really deserve to be alongside these albums. They are fantastic pieces of music, and I have to point them out. So, without further ado, here are my top 5 EPs of the year. Number 5, we got Like Moths to Flames, Pure Like Porcelain. After a really, really solid No Eternity in Gold last year, they're already back with new music and somehow improving on that. I think this is more or less a victory lap around their whole discography. They've got some of their most crushing heavies, some of their more passionate vocals, and interesting experiments in a long time, especially from a band that I don't think really experiments all that often. So it's really cool to see them pulling out the stops on this very, very short record and really just going hard. It's some of the most enjoyable stuff they put out in a long time, which is saying something, because I said that very same thing about No Eternity in Gold, but goddamn, dude, they just don't miss. They don't fucking miss. It's so good. You should check it out. Number 4 is Insomnium's Argent Moon. We talked about Bellacore earlier. This is another side of that mellow death, kind of overly melodic melodeath side, with lots of intricate orchestral elements, but I think here they focus more on creating these beautiful moments with the instruments, with the guitars and the bass playing, and kind of creating these really natural, organic structures that flow through you and kind of fill you with warmth. Even the heavy parts are not quite as heavy as Bellacore, not quite as straightforward. It just carries so well, and then the clean vocals mix in with this ambience so well that doesn't sound like it's kind of glaring or strange on a death metal record. I just think that Insomniums are a master of their craft. I think that they are some of the best to do this style of metal, and the fact that they're still pulling it out It's awesome.
Take me home.
Coming in at number 3 is Stoneside's The Water. Now, anybody who's been paying attention to my channel probably knew this was coming. I love Stoneside. I think they embody everything that Sleep Token could be if they deviated a little bit more from their structure, but I think now that I've really come to more understand the project, there's even more to it. The way that they follow the stories of the dead and bring in real life stories and kind of, I wouldn't say romanticize it, but put it so eloquently in their music that balances off with their gorgeous clean singing and eventual kind of explosions of frustration that aren't even so much screams as just yelling, just shouting in powerful moments. It stands out, and the fact that they can bring in those really clean, almost poppy electronic sections, balance it with the gent music, but in a way that's a little bit more interwoven than, say, Sleep Token, is exactly why I make that comparison so much, is because they really do take that formula, but kind of twist it enough so that it's kind of not even close to the same listening experience. It just has the same elements placed in such a unique way, in a beautiful way, and I can't wait for their new EP that's coming out later this year, so definitely check them out. Number 2 EP of the year is The Devil Wears Prada. Now, The Devil Wears Prada Zombie 2 is a sequel to their first zombie EP, and it really, really is. I was kind of worried about that because while I loved the act, I didn't think they were going to come off of a kind of slowed down, intricate, and incredibly experimental album like The Act, and then somehow pick it back up to ferocity like they did. And they did it with a punch. This is some of their hardest hitting material. It is just punishing from start to finish. They bring you in with these really, really cool ambient textures that kind of help sell the world. And finally, the song Nora, which really seals the deal for me because it tells that more personal narrative of a singular person in this apocalyptic world and really immerses you and brings you in. And they did justice to that zombie EP name because that was considered some of their best material, and I gotta say, this holds up with it, dude. It's so good. It is so good. Could have easily been the top one if it wasn't for the surprise here. Number 1 is Lorna Shore's And I Return to Nothingness. Now, this was a sleeper for me. I liked Lorna Shore. They were pretty cool, but then they lost their singer, and it wasn't really sure what they were going to do with the rest of their career. And then they released To the Hellfire, and it broke the internet because it had some of the most filthy, guttural, freakish vocals in the breakdown that we've ever seen. And the fact that they took that fame and they put out two songs that didn't ape that same structure, that did their own thing uniquely and created this really, really impressive body of work, and even more kind of eclipsed To the Hellfire. It's baffling to me because it is just such a well put together and infectious piece of work. It is blackened metal at its fucking peak, and it's stripping away a lot of the deathcore tendencies outside of, your breakdowns, etc. But I think that is to its benefit. I think it owes itself to these huge, majestic proportions that it sells, these massive concepts about death and rebirth, and overall, it's so impressive how well put together it was, even to the very clever use of synth work and electronic drum kits going on the final track. Is everything has its own identity. You've got the totally brutal abyssal hell stomping of To the Hellfire. You have a kind of epic chant, a call to action of the abyss, and then you have almost the celebration, the rebirth, the reincarnation. You feel invigorated, you feel your spirit explode with And I Return to Nothingness, which is so funny because it's such a bleak name and a bleak concept, but it hits right. It's as good feeling as black metal is ever gonna get, and that is why it is number 1 on the EPs. Now let's get to number 1 on the album. finally, at number 1, Harakiri For The Sky's Maere. Took me off guard. I gotta say, I've been exposed to a lot of this kind of black metal, post-black metal sound of this past year, from Lorna Shore bringing it into deathcore, to bands like Agalok bringing in elements of emo and shoegaze in there. It's gone all over the place, and it's largely in thanks to Boris the Wizard, somebody who is on my Twitch channel and requests these songs on my streams. Shameless plug. You know, hey, come watch. But this band, I ended up finding out on my own. I found a bunch of people were gassing up this album as being one of the best of the year, but I just didn't really get into it yet. But then I sat down and listened to it because I figured, you know, we're wrapping the year up. I should check it out, and somehow it managed to eclipse the greatest mistake of my life. It managed to really step above that. It is an 80-minute long epic, but it feels like it's half the runtime. It is just a non-stop bombardment of amazing ideas. Intense black metal-ish sections, impassioned, almost roaring vocals, just constant barrage of infectious riffs. Literally, every few seconds as I sat here listening to it, I was hearing an amazing riff being put together, and just these great, lush environments crafted with such care and love that you would think that they've been working on this for the better part of a decade. It really is some impressive, masterful work, and the fact that I didn't get sick of it after 80 fucking minutes. You understand how hard it is for me to sit down and listen to an album for 80 fucking minutes? Almost no albums that go that long, I sit there and go, you probably could have used a trim. Nothing needed to be trimmed here. It felt like every single moment of this album belonged on it, made it better. And that is in itself a fucking feat alone. This is some of the best guitar work you'll hear, some of the best drum work you'll hear, some of the best vocals you'll hear as far as screams go, some of the best songwriting, lyricism, some of the one of the best covers that you'll hear all year is on this album. This album has so many elements that just obliterate the competition, and I loved it. Number 1 album of the year. And that is my albums and EPs of the year. Let me know what you think. Did I miss something that you loved? Obviously, opinions are welcome. This is not the end-all be-all. This is a lot of personal preference, and I want to hear your personal preference. So let me down in the comments. We'll have a discussion about it. Outside of that, guys, this has been a great wrap-up. We went over my songs of the year over on Twitch, where we had a bunch of stuff. Some of it is from these albums, because I was originally leaving a few of these albums off the list. But I'm looking forward to some of the records coming out, especially records from possibly Eskimo Callboy, Bad Omens, Brand of Sacrifice have all been rumored to be putting out music next year, so I'm really stoked. I'm really looking forward to it, and let's put this year behind us, because holy shit, that was one loaded fucking year of music. Thank you everybody for watching. Links down below if you want to join the Discord, if you want to see the Twitch streams. Every other Friday I do reactions, and the alternating Friday off of that I do karaoke streams, so either way you can bring in music, have me listen to it, give my thoughts, sing it, etc, etc, etc. Outside of that, thank you guys so much for watching, and take care. Peace.